everyone. It is Monday. I don't know if you can hear. I might be. It's Monday, and we are doing our Mental Health Mondays. So I'm so excited. It is 4 o'clock on Monday to talk about today's topic, which is our negative thinking and our negative thoughts. And that is going to be very important about what's going on in our lives. Our negative thoughts definitely dominate a lot of our lives and the things that we're going through. So today we're going to cover the negativity bias, it's called. Talk about why it happens, right? Why do we find ourselves being so negative or consumed by so much negativity? As well as what can we do, right? What do we do when we're in these spaces? So first, to get us started, I want us, and I'll explain why we do this after, but I want you to think about just the weekend, right? We all just came off the weekend. We're starting a new week. I want you to think of 3 good things that happened over the weekend, right? So they can be 3 big things, 3 small things. What are just 3 good things that happened over the weekend? So for me, my 3 good things that happened over this weekend was I get to spend some time by the pool. It was really, I'm in Jersey, and it was super, super hot this weekend. It was mostly yesterday and I think today. So I had to spend some time by the pool. I got to have, on Saturday, I got to have a really good meal, and it was one of my favorite pizza dishes, so I had that. And I also just got to relax and watch a really good movie. Sicario, I think the name of it was called. If you've seen it, let me know. We can talk about it. I'm not a big movie buff, but it was a good movie. And then one not so good thing, right? So what's one not so good thing that happened over the weekend? For me, it was when I went to do one of my morning workouts. There was just interesting situation that happened with someone having a spot reserved and miscommunications, and just ended up shortening my workout. It was just an awkward, unnecessary situation. But I didn't really enjoy it, and definitely put me in a weird space. So what I want you to do, as I said, we're talking today about negativity and our thoughts, and why do we end up feeling so negative all the time, or surrounded by so much negativity. Thinking of what are just 3 good things that happened over the weekend. If you're watching this later and it's not the weekend, just think of the past few days. 3 good things that have happened and one not so good thing. So after that, so now we're talking about the negativity bias. So you may or may not have heard about it. It's actually one of my favorite things to talk about, because I think it's a very interesting concept, is the negativity bias. So the negativity bias is a phenomenon within ourselves in which our brains essentially are programmed to be more negative. So this dates back to forever and ever and ever ago, where for evolutionary reasons and for survival reasons, we needed to be on constant alert, right? Because they were, there's predators and things like that around. So over time, we've just naturally have become people that are kind of looking for danger, looking for things that aren't as pleasant, right? Because we were doing it for evolutionary reasons. However, as we've kind of gotten more evolved, it's not necessarily needed as much, but it's definitely beneficial in some parts of our lives, right? So if we think of when we are children, and our experience in life is definitely not as long lived as others, right? Because they're still babies. We still have to be aware of danger and having those internal instincts within us that alert us to danger. And then of course, as we kind of get older and we have lived experiences, we recognize what is realized danger and what's not. So the negativity bias is a phenomenon that happens in which we have more of a psychological response to negative situations, which is why we hold on to them more. So an example of a negativity bias, for example, is if you put on an outfit, you're walking down the street, you feel good about yourself, you really are feeling yourself, you're feeling your outfit, and someone comes up to you and oh, you look really great today. And then you keep walking, now you're feeling really good, and someone else comes up to you and they're like, you look like trash. You're probably going to hold on to that comment that someone says you look like trash for a lot longer, because you probably had a very emotional reaction to that response. You probably got really angry. You were upset. How dare they say that to me? You're now talking to other people. Can you believe what this person said to me? Maybe now you feel self-conscious, right? You tend to have more of this psychological response to these negative experiences. And what happens is that our brain then tends to seek out more of that, right? So that's when you end up in situations where you're like, everything that's happening to me, that anything that could go wrong will go wrong, right? When it rains, it pours, right? Because we're just, all these negative things just start happening, or we're perceiving a lot of the negative things that are happening around us. And what happens also is that while positive experiences are happening, they're moving through our brain undetected. So even though you're walking on the street, right, and that happened where someone said you look good, and you're the one person that said you look like trash, you're not even registering that person anymore who said that you look good, right? And now as you continue about your day, there's all these other great things that are happening around you that you're just like super oblivious to because you're holding on to those negative things. And now because you're holding on to it, you start to notice now more and more negative things. That's the negativity bias at work in a quick run through. And it's I say this is like one of my favorite things to talk about because it's just very interesting, right? When you kind of think of your own personal lives and your lived experiences and how there might have been more negativity that's just been happening. And you're just like, why can't I get this out of my head, right? Why do I just feel like I'm just stuck in this loop or this cycle of negativity? Why is this person always so negative, right? Why when I come to them with something, the first thing out of their mouth is something negative? It's because it's something that happens that is so automatic because of who we are as humans, right? It's not like it's like, some people do this, some people don't do this. It's just something that like it is within all of us to be more negative, right? If you even think of the news, how often is the news negative? That's because people are more drawn to the negative news. So I was reading through about some stuff a little bit ago, and they were talking about this, and they did a study where if there's the news was showing a lot more positive things or negative things, what are people more likely to tune into and watch and like want to engage in? And it's the negativity. It's the negative stuff, right? Even though we all hate it and we hate that the news is so negative, we don't want to watch it, it draws our attention, and it's more attention grabbing, right? When there's something dramatic happening, something really tragic happening, it draws us in. That is the negativity bias at work. And it's like, as I mentioned, it's interesting because how automatic it is for it to happen. But then also with that, it also takes us so much like work to undo or overcome the negativity bias. So they say on average it takes about 3 to 5 positive experiences to combat just one negative experience, which is like you literally, like your brain is working against you. You have to actively retrain your brain to be more positive. And that's why we'll go into at the end some tips and strategies to overcome the negativity bias. But that's why it's like a big focus on the work that I do with students, and even within my private work that I do with clients, because it's so powerful in how much it really dominates the things that we do when we don't recognize how important and dominating it is. Right? So we can get stuck in our thoughts and how our thoughts connect to how we feel connects to how we act, right? It's the principle of what's called CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, right? It's that the connection between our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. So it's very important to recognize like that cycle. But when I work with students, right, and they're kind of stuck or complaining about academics, their school load, the course instructor, not knowing what to do, their major, their career, their internship, whatever. When we're looking at decisions, a lot of them tend to start with all the things that could go wrong. Oh, but I can't afford this, or I can't how am I going to get to this thing? How am I, whatever, right? Then thinking of all the opposite things that can be really great and that are happening. And it's honestly at this point without fail that every single student that I work with, I have to do that work of like bringing them to that positivity, right? Of like, how are we moving from having those negative thoughts and learning how to overcome our negativity bias. So it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge, something that I definitely still struggle with to this day, even though I do this work, I'm, very well versed in this work. When it comes to actually doing it in practice, it's difficult, right? Especially the older you are and you've been doing your way of life for so long, to break those habits and relearn new habits takes a lot of effort. A lot of effort. It can be done though, right? I'm not a person who says like you can't teach old dogs new tricks. You can, just that dog may not want to learn those tricks. But there's some dogs that will learn, right? It all depends on your willingness to change. So while it definitely is doable, it definitely just takes a lot of extra effort to combat that negativity bias. And so what's important for us to think about is like, how can we be more positive? Because the negativity bias is so automatic and so like active within our lives, it can get very difficult for us to take the time to figure out, one, what do we need to do for ourselves to start becoming more positive? Two, how can we make sure that we're being consistent with these different practices to be more positive? But three, how are we patient with the process, right? As I mentioned, and for those who are joining in, we're talking about the negativity bias, which is this phenomenon that happens within our brains to be more negative. And it stems from evolutionary reasons as to why more negative thoughts, actions, etc. happen within our lives because of how our brain essentially is programmed to be more negative due to evolutionary reasons where, you know, we had to do it for protection and things like that. So because it's so automatic and so ingrained in who we are, it definitely takes a lot of work to do those extra steps to no longer be so negative, right? And that's why, for example, things like gratitude journals or practicing gratitude is so important, because essentially the premise behind practicing gratitude is that you're looking for things that are positive that have happened within your lives, right? So it's not necessarily being like gracious for family, for health and things like that. When I practice gratitude, I can, I practice gratitude for people who send me orca videos because they know that I love orcas. I express gratitude for French fries. If I got to have French fries that day, I express gratitude for funny memes or jokes and things that I got to experience in that day. And what that's doing is it's bringing to the forefront of my brain all of the good things that have happened. Because what typically can happen for a lot of us is the day ends and you're just ruminating on all the things that went wrong, all the things that you could have been doing that you didn't get to do, all the things that you need to get done tomorrow and how you're gonna get it done because you have all these other things to do, right? And now you're just kind of stuck in this like defeated place. What practicing gratitude does is it forces you to bring those really good moments, whether they're big or small, to the forefront of your brain. So that is why, for example, the practice of gratitude and using gratitude journals or whatever it may be that best suits you has tons of great research now in the benefits, because what you're doing is you're combating that negativity bias. Again, not easy work, but definitely doable. When I started this, I asked for you guys to think of 3 positive things that happened over the past few days and 1 negative thing, right? Because if they say it takes about 3 to 5 positive experiences to combat just 1 negative experience in your brain, right? Because those positive experiences tend to move through undetected, but we hold on to those negative ones. That means I need to make sure that I'm putting more effort to recognize the positive in my days or my weeks and my months. However, we don't want to just push the negative things aside, right? We want to feel them, we want to process them, we want to accept them for what they are, but we don't want to hold on to them for too long. So what that exercise does, where you do that 3-to-1 ratio or 5-to-1 ratio, right? 3 positives to 1 negative, 5 positives to 1 negative, whatever's easier for you. But it's helping you make sure that you're not just only focusing on the negative. I do that when I do my own journaling. I start with thinking of what were the 3 things that happened in the day that I really enjoyed, and maybe it was one not so good thing that happened. And I just allow myself to have just one thing that did not really go so well. So, so when you're talking about overcoming and combating the negativity bias, gratitude journals, really great for that. Quick exercises to point out the positive versus the negative in your day, your week, your month, etc. As well as just being able to recognize your thought, right? So self-awareness is always one of the big components of a lot of the work when it comes to working on your mental health and working on your well-being, is where are you at now, right? What is happening with who I am? And that self-awareness is always such a big step. So when you start to notice your thoughts are becoming more negative, you're noticing that you're kind of stuck in this negative cycle, how can you, one, just name it, right? You recognize it and you name it. Now you can also say, how can I move myself out of this, right? Now that I know that this is a negativity bias at work, how can I move myself forward and move myself out of this, right? By trying to find something positive, by doing an activity that I really like to do that's going to bring me some joy. And what's really also interesting about this is how you can express this to others. When you see people talking, for example, about relationships, and they're talking about their spouse or their partner. Sorry, it's like my leg. I get really comfortable when I do this. Talking about their partner or their spouse. How are they talking about positive things, negative things? I think my phone's about to die. Oh, sorry. Okay. Are they talking about positive things? Are they talking about negative things? Because typically they probably find themselves talking about a lot of the negative things about their partner, right? So how can you, now that you know about the negativity bias, how can you help your friends and those around you to start being more positive, right? How can you ask them those questions? Well, what are the good things that you like? What are some of the good things that they're doing? How can we make sure that we're noticing those as much as we're noticing the things that we don't like, right? So that was our quick Mental Health Monday. I hope those are kind of quick, about 20 minutes, to talk about the negativity bias. As I said, it's one of my favorite things to talk about because how automatic and pervasive it is for a lot of us in our lives. So once we're able to recognize what it is, name what it is, we can now also do the work to combat and overcome the negativity bias. If you have any questions, feel free to add them to the comment section. I would love to answer any of your guys' questions. As I said, I love talking about this kind of stuff. And the rest of the week, we'll continue the conversation. I hope you have a great rest of your week.